All right, let's dive right in. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking what is absolutely, undeniably, the most legendary cold case in aviation history. We're talking about the facts, the evidence, and the downright incredible science behind a mystery that has literally gripped the world since 1971. It's the ultimate hook, isn't it? Who exactly was D.B. Cooper? I mean, it's such a simple question, but man, it has completely baffled federal investigators, top tier scientists, and amateur sleuths for well over 4 decades now. And here's why it's so famous. Out of all the aerial crimes ever committed, this remains the only unsolved skyjacking in United States history. Think about that. A guy extorts $200,000, jumps out of a commercial airliner, and just vanishes into the night. Gone. No trace. Section 1, the skyjacking of Flight 305. Okay, to really wrap our heads around this, we got to start with the timeline. It all kicks off on November 24th, 1971. Flight 305 departs Portland, Oregon. Just a regular day, right? Well, mid-flight, a totally ordinary-looking passenger hands a note to a flight attendant saying he's got a bomb. The plane is forced to land in Seattle, where our guy demands and actually gets a $200,000 ransom and 4 parachutes. They take off again, this time pointing towards Reno, Nevada. And somewhere in those pitch-black skies between Seattle and Reno, he pops open the back stairs and just parachutes out of the Boeing 727. Now, as you can imagine, the sheer weight of the bureaucracy that followed was massive. You're looking at an actual FBI Freedom of Information cover sheet straight from the archives. This absolutely brazen act of air piracy kicked off an unprecedented federal investigation, case CR-0451. At the time, the feds were pretty optimistic. They figured, hey, we'll wrap this up in no time. Obviously, they couldn't have been more wrong. Moving on to Section 2. The global manhunt begins. The second Cooper hit the ground, or wherever he landed, authorities were scrambling. Look at how the suspect sketches evolved here. On the left, we've got the raw initial sketch, and on the right, the revised, much more detailed drawing. It's so interesting to see how the FBI's perception of the guy actually shifted as they interviewed the terrified flight crew and really dialed in the details. So, based on those critical eyewitness accounts, the FBI built out this highly specific profile. They were hunting for a white male, mid-40s, right around 5'10" to 6 feet tall, weighing maybe 170 to 180 pounds. He had an olive complexion and dark hair parted on the left. The crew noted he had this low, intelligent-speaking voice, kind of sounded Midwest, but no super distinct accent. And his outfit? Classic early 70s business, dark suit, white shirt, and a black clip-on tie. Oh, an absolutely crucial detail. He was a chain smoker. He smoked Raleigh filter-tip cigarettes the whole time. They blasted this official FBI bulletin far and wide. They desperately needed the public to recognize that face. But as you can guess, finding a guy who quite literally vanished into thin air? Yeah, near impossible. Tracking the cash, though? Well, that should have been the easy part. Take a look at this number right here, 34. Now, that's not the guy's age, and it's not the number of passengers he held hostage. Nope, 34 is the number of pages it took just to list the serial numbers of the stolen money. It's wild. Attorney General John Mitchell and J. Edgar Hoover actually printed and distributed a massive 34-page ransom list of Federal Reserve notes to banks, police stations, and businesses all over the country. They were basically casting a massive nationwide net, hoping someone, somewhere, would spend one of those specific bills. Which brings us to Section 3, the Robin Hood Syndrome. So while the feds are tearing the country apart looking for this guy, the general public was doing something entirely different. It's this bizarre juxtaposition. On one side, you've got the public perception. They saw D.B. Cooper as this daring, romanticized anti-hero, sticking it to the corporate establishment. People were literally writing songs and selling T-shirts about him. But flip the coin, and you get the airline pilot's reality. To them, this wasn't a folk hero. This was a highly dangerous blackmailing criminal who put a plane full of innocent people in serious jeopardy. And man, this drove aviation professionals crazy. Check out this actual article from Airline Pilot magazine back in 1972. It talks about this exact thing. They called it the Robin Hood Syndrome. Pilots and crew members constantly had to remind the public that, hey, an armed skyjacking isn't some legendary prank to celebrate. It's a terrifying crime. They totally didn't mince words about it either. Quote, "He is a thief and a criminal of the highest order." Absolutely zero romanticism there.
The folks flying the planes wanted it crystal clear. If Cooper survived that jump, he needed to be hunted down and prosecuted to the absolute fullest extent of the law.
All right, Section 4, Modern Science and Microclues. So decades roll by. The trail goes completely freezing cold. But then, in 2007, a real game changer happens. FBI Special Agent Larry Carr does something totally unheard of. He actually opens up the D.B. Cooper case files to the public. He gave a dedicated team of independent scientists, they called themselves the Citizen Sleuths, unprecedented access to the actual physical evidence. And the craziest part? Absolutely zero government funding was used for this modern investigation. Let's break down exactly how these researchers squeezed fresh clues out of a decades-old artifact. Step 1, get access to the FBI archives. Step 2, they honed in on the most critical piece of evidence Cooper left behind on that plane, his cheap, black clip-on tie. Using some incredibly advanced tools, they lifted microscopic particles right off the fabric. And step 3, they analyzed the shape and chemical composition of those particles to track them straight back to their source. And you guys, what they found is just mind-blowing. We're talking about particles completely invisible to the naked eye. They discovered trace amounts of specific plant pollens, microscopic shards of pure titanium, and a whole bunch of other enigmatic elements. When you zoom into that macro level, suddenly a $1.50 clip-on tie isn't just an accessory anymore. It's a literal map. Each tiny particle's shape and composition tells a story about exactly where this guy lived and worked before he ever bought that ticket for Flight 305. It is just the ultimate intersection of history and science, isn't it? And it leaves us with this incredible, lingering question. Could a single microscopic speck of titanium, or maybe just a grain of pollen clinging to a cheap 1971 clip-on tie, be the one clue that finally breaks the only unsolved skyjacking in U.S. history? It really, really makes you wonder what other secrets are just sitting there, hiding in plain sight. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.